My name is Megan Lang, and I'm the chair of the board of Shelter Nova Scotia. And I'd like to warmly welcome the board, our employees, volunteers, donors, funders, and supporters who are in the audience. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Maliseet people first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. All of Shelter Nova Scotia's work is carried out in Mi'kmaq. Approval of the June 2019 Annual General Meeting minutes. The minutes have been distributed to you. Are there any changes or corrections?
So I have a couple of changes, Madam Chair, to the minutes that we reflect the meeting attendees who attended last year to include all staff and other attendees, and to include in the employee recognition those with 3, 5, 10, and 15 years of service, and I can amend those minutes accordingly if that's okay.
So I move that the minutes from the June 2019 AGM be approved as amended. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The 2019 AGM minutes are approved. I'll now read the chair's report. COVID-19 has exposed the large gaps in the homeless safety net. The pandemic highlights the vital social role governments are designed to play, supporting and strengthening society's most vulnerable. While we are grateful for Shelter Nova Scotia's history of solution-finding partnerships with the government sector, solutions have been temporary, short-term fixes for long-term systemic crisis. The bottom line is that shelters were never intended as a sustainable home base for people who found themselves homeless. They are designed as a Band-Aid for short periods of time until more permanent solutions are provided. Without longer-term housing solutions, people inevitably get stuck in the system. When we study housing first models in other countries, such as Finland, we learn that homelessness can be eradicated and costs reduced. Quite honestly, I'm tired of the committees and the reports and the studies and the talking about what we already know by the sheer and unacceptable numbers of homeless in Halifax and throughout the country. We're failing. We need political will to create radical change, and we need leadership to advocate for our most vulnerable. The message is clear: eliminate our current short-term crisis management approach and save money by investing in the homeless with stable, safe housing and long-term supports. Take the long game approach, invest now to save later. Through this crisis, I'm even more committed to work towards safe and supported housing, to invest in solutions and not continue to feed a broken system. I'll take the liberty of taking on one of the wisest pieces of advice we've received in the COVID-19 crisis. Give our homeless a Blazes home, because that's where we need to start. Thank you. I'm now just going to point out that there's a change to the agenda, and the executive director's report will come next, with the agenda continuing on as written. Executive Director report and message from Director of Human Resources, Linda Wilson and Tammy Smith. Linda, if you'd like to begin with your report.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you very much. And welcome everybody to the Shelter Nova Scotia annual meeting, our very first virtual meeting. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll do it this way forever. Last year seems so far away. The focus identified last year at the annual meeting was that we were going to become an employer of choice. People served by Shelter Nova Scotia deserve to be interacting with well-trained, supported, and fairly compensated employees. With everything else that's changed in the world, that goal has not changed. To confirm what we needed in place, I had the pleasure of meeting with the majority of employees individually to further understand their perspectives on what would it take to make Shelter Nova Scotia an employer of choice. Wages, staffing levels, and employee development and support were reported as the roadblocks. We love our jobs, we love the people we work with, we love our colleagues, but for most part, the wages are too low. It's burning out managers and full-time employees. To begin to lighten the load, 2 3-month pilot projects were created to provide temporary support, and one has been extended. Opportunity for job exchanges were also created, and a framework for practice was developed by a committee of employees to ground our approach. Currently, that framework is aimed at our homelessness sector, but in the days to come, it's going to be adapted to further develop the practice approaches in our housing and corrections sectors. Metro Turning Point has been a unionized working environment since 2004. This past summer, employees from our other facilities held a successful union certification vote. We're really looking forward to the clarity that a collective agreement will bring to our working environment. There was a great amount of continued structural improvement in the 6 buildings that we own and operate. And this continued improvement provides better, safer, more respectful places for people to stay and people to work. And we're very happy about that. The new world. Well, we're trained to work in crisis and trauma, and we want to do that work. However, the additional crisis on top of everything that the COVID-19 pandemic brought to Shelter Nova Scotia could have broken our back. The expectations increased and the chaos grew, and no one in the world had any answers. But the fear, expectations, and demands were everywhere, and not from the clients. Trying to keep stability as the ground was shifting every day was exhausting and disheartening, but people showed up. Past employees came back and worked, bringing with them their expertise and a lift to morale. Our community partnerships with other service providers were strengthened. We could no longer accept or expect people to pick up their volunteer duties or drop off donations. So instead, they donated money and held online campaigns knowing that we still needed the help. We still needed to fundraise. We don't have enough. We couldn't fundraise in the old trusted and true ways, and new donors found us. Personal protective equipment supplies arrived. Provincial and federal governments worked to problem solve with the community, and for quite a while it was every day. Now it's a few times a week. Before COVID-19, we had a plan to reduce shelter numbers by working to provide and find more affordable supported housing. The goal was not changed. However, now it's not an option. We cannot go back to the way things were with crowded shelters. We always knew that people needed their own places to live, their own bedrooms. COVID-19 has shone a light on this historical crisis everywhere, even for people who may not have considered it before. While most people were staying the blazes home, there were some people who were outside. They may have been easy to miss before as we hustled and bustled through crowds and shoppers and different people like that. But through the crisis, the highest point of this pandemic, there were only two types of people outside, people walking their dogs and people who had nowhere to go. They may have been easy to miss before, but they weren't then. It was strikingly stark. You could not look away. There's nowhere else to look. No words to explain or reason it away. No more excuses. No more partial solutions are acceptable. Having said that, I need to say sincerely, thank you to those who've always been there and to those who've come forward now that they understand. We will persevere in new ways and never give up, because that's not what we do. Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask Tammy Smith, our Director of Human Resources, to give her report.
Thank you, Linda. I'm not going to read my report as was included in the AGM handout that everyone has received, but just a couple of high points. The year, to say that the year has been challenging, I think would be an understatement. We've had all kinds of situations and roadblocks and have persevered through most of them quite handily. The turnover in our staff has been a very big challenge in the past year, and that's something that we are still struggling with as we do try to move toward being an employer of choice. The introduction of COVID has certainly heightened that challenge, and recruiting has taken on a whole different spin, and virtual interviews and remote hiring packages, things like that. So the year was filled with a few really exceptional learning experiences for the organization, and for some student placements through the co-op education program. We were very fortunate to have a number of students join us last year, and two that were a bit different than anything that we've had before was one that partnered quite well with our kitchen at Metro Turning Point. As the kitchen was new and improved last year, we also were able to have a dietary intern join us for 4 months, and the dietary intern helped to provide a rotating menu and ordering and get the kitchen going and provide stable food choices and things for the client staying or the guest staying at Metro Turning Point. So that was quite a lot of something that was a unique experience for us. So it was something that we quite enjoyed to do. And we also were able to have a management intern with us for 8 months. And the intern shadowed our executive director, Linda, for the 8 months. And she got quite a front row seat into the workings of an organization. So she found that very valuable experience, as did we, because not only do the students get to hone their skills and knowledge, we also get the benefit of being on the receiving end of what's new and exciting and being taught in the school. So that's coming in sort of a breath of fresh air as well. So as we move forward in our new normal that is COVID, I really hope that we will do it with gratitude in our hearts, and I'm sure we will. And one of the things that we like to do at the AGM is recognize and celebrate our employees for their years of service. So this year we have a total of 19 employees that we'll be recognizing. Order with our 3 years of service, we have Brittany Lisk, Helena King-Hare, Mandy Chapman, Carrie Johnson, Angela Coughlin, Shannon Johnston, Freya Kaiser-Derrick, Cam Burbridge, Renee Poitra, Samantha Rudolph, Cassandra Crick, Evan Parker, Sarah Handel, Tracy Roran, Sarah McCrory, and Kinnan Job. We also have 2 employees that have attained their 5 years of service with Shelter Nova Scotia, and that would be Lisa Klochek and Selena Jackson. And celebrating 10 years with Shelter Nova Scotia is Jeremy Pongoski. So that's 19 employees who have reached milestones with us, and congratulations to all of them. And we will celebrate when we're able to be together. So I look forward to that, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tammy, and to all our exceptional employees, and to Linda for your report. The board works from a governance model and has 3 working committees: finance, audit, and risk, stakeholder relations, and governance. There will be reports from each committee chair. To begin, Tara Spur with Lyle Tilly Davidson will present the audited financial statements. I invite Tara to present the statements now, if she'd like.
Thank you. So we've prepared an audit of the financial statements for the year ended March 31st, 2020. We've issued a qualified opinion on the statements. The qualification is a standard not-for-profit qualification for completeness of donations and fundraising. The statement of financial position is on page 3 of the financial statements and indicates a decrease in the assets of the organization from 5.9 million or to 5.9 million from 6.1 million in the prior year. This is mainly due to a decrease in the cash at year end, which is reflective of the decrease in the deferred revenue, some capital purchases, and repayment of long-term debt. Liabilities have decreased this year from 4.5 million in 2019 to 4.3 million in 2020. Largest contributor to this is the decrease in the deferred revenue. Net assets have increased this year from 1.5 million last year to 1.6 million in 2020 due to the excess of revenue over expenditures for the year of $11,971, as indicated on the statement of revenues and expenditures on page 4 of the financial statements. On the statement of revenue and expenditures, you'll note that revenues have increased this year to 5 million from 4.8 million last year due to increased government funding as well as increased fundraising and donations received during the year. Expenditures have increased this year from 4.6 million to just over 5 million in 2020 due to increased costs of salaries, repairs and maintenance, and food expenditures. Other expenditures include amortization and an unrealized loss on investments that were donated during the year. So overall, we found that the financial statements and the books and records of the organization were in good order. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tara. Chelsea King, who is the Chair of Finance Audit and Risk, will deliver the Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Megan, and thanks, Tara, for your detailed review of the audited financial statements. I'm also not going to read my full report as it is included in the AGM package, and Tara has already touched on a lot of the same points, but I will note a few highlights. As Tara already stated, there was an increase in revenues this year of approximately $200,000. A big chunk of this is a result of the reinstatement of a $50,000 grant from Housing Nova Scotia that was not received in the prior year. And in addition, there was additional funding received in 2020 from Correctional Services Canada for enhanced services. And as Tara mentioned, higher fundraising and donations than prior year. The expenses have also increased. This is largely due to higher salary expense in the current year. And I do want to note that while salaries have increased over prior year, they did come in under budget, and the shelter continues to struggle, as Linda mentioned, with hiring and maintaining the staffing complement. So this is a key area of focus for the organization. Shelter Nova Scotia operates under a balanced budget with a reported surplus of approximately $12,000 for the year ended March 31st, 2020, and has a healthy net assets balance of $1.6 million. The financial statements were approved by the Board of Directors on June 5th, 2020. If there's any questions on the financial statements, I believe we are taking questions at the end of the meeting, so happy to answer those at that time. And lastly, I'm just going to read the following motion that was made at a previous board meeting, which was moved by John Wanzik, seconded by Stephen Campbell. The board accepts the Treasurer's recommendation to reappoint the external auditors, Lyle Tilly Davidson, for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, and this motion was carried.
Thank you, Chelsea. We will now hear from Jamie O'Neill, who is Vice Chair of Shelter Nova Scotia Board and Chair of Stakeholder Relations Committee.
Probably works best if I unmute myself, right? Okay. Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone. Shelter Nova Scotia, we have the committee that was formed over the last couple of years called the Stakeholder Committee. and it's supporting the ongoing initiatives and goals of the organization. So members of this committee include Megan Lang, Linda Wilson, Jeremy Jackson, Dean Simmons, Kathy Gillis, Melissa Phillips, and myself, Jamie O'Neill. An important measure of success in achieving the goals set out in front of us is to continue to build upon the relationships we have with our key stakeholders and our donors. This past year has presented many challenges to Shelter Nova Scotia, as echoed by both Megan and Linda, but we are extremely grateful for the relationships and support we have received. We continue to nurture relationships within all levels of government, including municipal, provincial, and federal, also working closely with affordable housing, Housing Nova Scotia, and housing and homelessness partnerships, public health, and other valuable partners. We can continue to drive our vision throughout our community and beyond. In preparation for today's AGM, I was online and came across an article that was actually posted by the CBC back in November of 2013. In this article, it was mentioned that the goal was to end homelessness in Halifax by 2019. Unfortunately, that goal was not achieved, but many advances have been made, especially now, is aspirated by the state of emergency caused by COVID-19. I am a firm believer that we should never let a good crisis go to waste. Thanks to the support of our many stakeholders, many new improvements to our existing facilities are being made as we speak, and it would not have happened without your support and advice. So we thank you. As we set our eyes forward to the 2020-2021 year, our committee will continue to engage our key stakeholders at all levels to ensure that we support and enhance the services we provide our clients. As Albert Einstein once said, the world is a dangerous place, not because of those that do evil, but because of those who look and do nothing. Affordable housing is a major undertaking, and we at Shelter Nova Scotia are committed to doing our part to be part of that solution. We have many exciting plans for the upcoming year, and we look forward in communicating those aspirations as the year unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Kathy Gillis, Chair of Governance, will present the committee report.
Thank you, Megan, for the opportunity to do that. I feel like I'm the most boring person on earth after listening to all the great speeches that were ahead of me, and I'm going to talk about all the riveting things we've done in governance. But it's a very important feature for a board to follow the discipline, so I'm pretty excited about it, and I hope everybody else can get as excited as I am. Just to recognize our committee, Stephen Campbell, Jeff Franklin, myself, Megan as well, Linda, and for a certain period of time, Melissa Phillips worked with us on the governance piece. Some of the things we've been very active dealing with in the last year or so is updating our bylaws. They were fairly outdated. We're in a position to bring those forward shortly for consideration and approval. Establishing terms of reference for all the committees. Again, some really exciting stuff, but nonetheless very important that everybody understands their roles and responsibilities. Creating a code of conduct and confidentiality agreement for board membership, which again is a best practice for board execution. Updating the executive director's contract that had been a bit outdated for a number of years, so we were really pleased to make sure that was more current. We also sponsored an organizational compensation review of the management functions within Shelter Nova Scotia, and that's still ongoing, and we need to continue looking at that, especially in light of some of the changes that are coming forward. And board evaluation. The work needs to continue on a number of items. Bylaws, again, need to finish that work. A process for appointing and renewing board memberships, board orientation, and also executive director succession planning. So those are the things that, as the next year unfolds, we'll be focusing on. So that would be my report. The other item that I have the honor of talking about is recognition of board members who are actually retiring. And at this point, I'd just like to acknowledge Colin McLean, John Wemzinski, and Stephen Campbell. They are retiring as board members. And we want to thank them sincerely for all their hard work and dedication and commitment. We've seen everybody both in the board environment, but also working and volunteering at some of the areas in Shelter, Nova Scotia. So very happy for their retirement for them to enjoy some time off and to carry on with other things. I also have a number of board appointments to recommend for final approval at this AGM. 3 new board members: Deborah Page, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications for Develop Nova Scotia; Lynn Hartwell, who's currently the VP of Campuses and Communities with the Nova Scotia Community College, and folks may know her as a previously Deputy Minister of Community Services, and as well Dennis Young. He's a Managing Director for Barrington Edge Consulting. So I would ask now that these board members, I'm moving that these board members be now approved for acceptance to our board.
Hi, it's Jeremy Jackson, and I would second that motion.
So we just need a vote for that, Megan?
Sorry. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So it's approved that our 3 new board members will be joining the board. Yay. Thank you very much, Kathy. I think we're opening the floor to questions at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct, Megan. And we actually have just communicated with Braden, and we have no questions, but some recognition of kudos to the group for the AGM.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. Well, in that case, congratulations, everyone, for our first virtual AGM. And on behalf of the board and the employees of Shelter, Nova Scotia, we wish you a safe and wonderful summer exploring our beautiful province. And next year, we hope to see you all in person. So thank you very much. And thank everybody for joining in. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.